Lu Chun wakes up as the greedy merchant destined to be killed by the righteous hero. His plan? Not cultivation, not revenge. Capitalism. Chapter 1. The Page of Doom. Lu Chun died to the blaring horn of a delivery truck and woke to the smell of dust and dung. His first breath was a gasp that filled his lungs with the dry, herbal-tinged air of a place that had never known pollution. His second breath caught in his throat as two sets of memories collided. 1. A 32-year-old office worker named Chun Lu, fond of web novels and instant noodles, now very dead. 2. An 18-year-old petty merchant's son named Lu Chun, living in a nameless border town of the Azure Dragon continent, now very much alive. He sat up on the hard pallet, the rough-spun blanket falling away. The room was small, cluttered with unsold trinkets, cheap talismans that wouldn't spark, dull iron daggers, and suspiciously cloudy spirit stones. Through the single window, the sounds of a waking market filtered in. The braying of donkey carts, the calls of early vendors, the distant clang of a blacksmith. But it was the third memory that crashed over him like a tsunami, drowning the other two in a flood of perfectly recalled text. Heaven's Chosen Sword, a Xinxiao web novel. 3,842 chapters of cultivation, face-slapping, heavenly tribulations, and harem building. He'd binge-read it over 2 weeks of vacation, alternately enthralled and groaning at its cliches. And he remembered the greedy merchant, a minor antagonist in the early arcs. A slick, opportunistic peddler in Green Rain Town who sells the young, destitute hero, Lin Feng, a map to a secret immortal cave. The map is a fake, leading to a nest of silver venom wasps. Lin Feng barely survives, losing his last remaining family heirloom in the process. 2 years and several power-ups later, a returning Lin Feng passes through the town, recognizes the merchant, and with a single, righteous flick of his sword, beheads him. The chapter was titled Settling an Old Debt. Readers cheered in the comments. Lu Chun stumbled to a cracked bronze mirror. The face staring back was young, unremarkable, with shrewd eyes that now held pure, undiluted terror. It was his face, the greedy merchant's face. "This is a transmigration cliché," he whispered to his reflection, his voice hoarse. "A terrible one. I'm the cannon fodder." Panic threatened to swallow him whole. His mind raced through the plot. Lin Feng would arrive in Green Rain Town in approximately 2 years, fleeing the destruction of his sect. He'd be wounded, penniless, and desperate for any clue to power. The original Lu Chun would see an easy mark. "I have 2 years," Lu Chun said, forcing calm into his voice. "I could run, change my name, hide in some mortal kingdom." But even as he thought it, he dismissed it. This was a Xinxiao world. Fate, karma, and plot armor were tangible forces. Would running change his destined encounter? Or would he just trip and fall at Lin Feng's feet in some other town? He paced the tiny room, his thoughts churning. He possessed the ultimate cheat code, perfect knowledge of the novel's events, locations, and resources up to about chapter 1500, where he'd stopped reading. He knew where secret realms would open, where ancient masters napped in caves, where heaven-defying herbs grew unguarded. The standard Transmigrated move would be to rush to those spots, grab the treasures, cultivate like mad, and become a god, usurping the hero's destiny. Lu Chun looked at his soft, merchant's hands. He felt the feeble pulse of his chi, barely enough to warm a cup of tea. He remembered the descriptions of cultivation, centuries of bitter isolation, constant mortal danger, brutal tribulations of lightning and heart demons. Lin Feng, the hero, had suffered unimaginable pain, loss, and betrayal on his path. "I don't want to be a god," Lu Chun realized with sudden, crystalline clarity. "I don't want to fight, to scheme, to defy the heavens. I just don't want to be beheaded." A new idea, absurd and brilliant, began to form. He wasn't a cultivator. He was a merchant, or he had been, in his past life, a seller of overpriced software solutions. His skill set was procurement, sales, and risk mitigation. What if he didn't fight the plot? What if he monetized it? He rushed to a dusty ledger, and began scribbling with a charcoal stick. He listed locations from the early chapters. 7 Color Lotus Valley, Chapter 14. Lin Feng finds it 6 months from now, uses it to cleanse his meridians after a poison attack. Whispering Caverns, Chapter 31. A minor hidden realm opening in 8 months. Lin Feng obtains the Earthroot Crystal, their scarlet-feathered vulture nest, Chapter 55. The beast is away during the storm moon. Lin Feng collects 3 feathers for a flight talisman. These spots were currently unknown, unguarded. Low risk, his heart hammered with a new kind of excitement. Not the thrill of ascension, but the thrill of a perfect business plan. He wouldn't steal the hero's destiny. He'd become its exclusive retailer. He sold the shop's entire inventory of fake goods that afternoon to a passing caravan for a pittance, ignoring the buyer's smug grin. With the coins and his father's old travel pack, he set out at dawn. The journey to the 7 Color Lotus Valley took a week. It was exactly as described, a hidden cleft behind a waterfall, filled with spiritual mist and vibrant flora. And there, in a crystalline pool, grew a single lotus, its petals shimmering through the spectrum. It was breathtaking, worth a fortune, and the key to Lin Feng's early survival. Lu Chun carefully harvested it, placing it in a jade box he'd overpaid for in the last town. He felt no spiritual connection to it, only evaluation. He then traveled to Floating Cloud City, a cultivation hub. In the Alchemist Guild, he auctioned the lotus. Bidding was fierce. He walked out with a heavy purse of mid-grade spirit stones, more wealth than the original Lu Chun would have seen in 10 lifetimes. He returned to the valley, not as a cultivator to claim it as his grotto, but as a developer. He hired mortal laborers from a nearby village. Using a fraction of his new wealth, he had them construct a sturdy, 2-story building of polished wood right at the valley's entrance. It was incongruous, elegant, and utterly commercial. He stocked the cellar with supplies he'd bought in the city. Quality healing pills, pre-made talismans, blank scrolls, spirit stones, dried rations, and even a few decent, unenchanted swords. On the day of the grand opening, he stood back and looked at his creation. Above the door, a polished plaque read, "Fated Encounter Pawn and Provisions. Discreet service for the discerning seeker." Beneath, in smaller script, "All sales final. No refunds. No exchanges. No karmic debts accepted." Lu Chun smoothed his new, expensive silk robes, dark blue, functional, not flashy. He took a deep breath, pushing down the lingering fear. He was no longer just Lu Chun, the cannon fodder. He was a businessman, and his primary client was a walking, talking embodiment of chaotic destiny. He walked inside, behind a solid counter of fragrant sandalwood, and waited for fate to walk through his door. It was, he decided, much better than waiting for it to walk in with a swirl. Chapter 2. The First Customer and the Survival Kit. Lin Feng was lost, in pain, and running out of time. The fight with the thornback spirit boar had been a mistake. A costly one. The beast's spines were laced with a numbing toxin that was slowly creeping up his meridians, turning his spiritual energy to sludge. His sword, a humble iron heirloom from his late master, was notched and dull. He'd fled deep into the wilderness, the boar's enraged squeals fading behind him. According to the tattered map he'd traded his last spirit stone for, there should be a healing herb, a 7-color lotus, in this valley. It was his only hope to cleanse the poison before it reached his dantian. He pushed through the final thicket, expecting a secluded grotto, and stopped dead. A building. A shop. Here, in the absolute middle of nowhere. It was well-made, clean, and utterly bizarre. The sign, "Fated Encounter," seemed to mock him. Was this some senior's secluded abode? A trap? His vision blurred, the toxin making his head swim. He had no choice. Staggering forward, he pushed the door open. A bell tinkled, a soft, mundane sound. The interior was neat, shelves stocked with jars, talismans, and supplies. It smelled of sandalwood and faint medicinal herbs. Behind a counter stood a young man, perhaps his own age, in fine but understated robes. He was looking at a ledger, not a cultivation manual. The man glanced up, His eyes were sharp, assessing, devoid of the warmth or hostility Lin Feng was used to. They scanned him from head to toe in a second, like a butcher pricing a hog. Poison residue in the lower meridian network. Phase 2 progression, the man said, his voice flat and businesslike. Spiritual energy depletion approximating 70%. Superior grade iron sword. Third notch from the hilt. Edge compromised. You're favoring your left leg, but that's a minor muscle tear, not spiritual. Lin Feng's jaw went slack. How did you? Standard deluxe survival kit should cover it. The merchant continued, as if Lin Feng hadn't spoken. He bent down and placed a bundled cloth package on the counter. He unfolded it with practiced motions, displaying the contents like a salesman. One vial of Green Dragon's Psi antidote, broad spectrum, effective against most beast-born neurotoxins. He pointed to a second item. 10 low-grade spirit stones, fire aspect for compatibility with your cultivation technique. Yes, I can tell. One Edge of Dawn sharpening talisman, single use, will restore that blade to serviceable condition. One ration pack. One basic water purification charm. Lin Feng stared. It was everything he needed. Precisely. It was uncanny, miraculous, and deeply unsettling. How much? He croaked, his hand instinctively going to his nearly empty coin purse. The merchant, Lu Chun, though Lin Feng didn't know his name yet, named a figure. It was astronomical. It was the price of a mid-grade magical artifact in a city auction. It was more spirit stones than Lin Feng had seen in his entire life. That's robbery. Lin Feng sputtered, the heat of anger momentarily cutting through the poison's chill. Lu Chun's expression didn't change. It's a convenience fee. You are in the middle of nowhere, actively dying, and I have the solution. Market dynamics. I have this jade pendant. Lin Feng pulled out his most valued possession, a simple white jade drop on a cord. It was his only reminder of his mother. Lu Chun took it, held it to the light, then produced a small, complex lens and examined it. Mortal-grade nephrite. Sentimental value. Negligible market value. Not accepted. Desperation clawed at Lin Feng's throat. Please, I will owe you. A life debt. A flicker of something. Was it panic? Crossed the merchant's face for a microsecond before the mask of indifference slammed back down. Absolutely not. No debts. Cash, or equivalent spiritual currency. Only. He seemed to think for a moment, then produced a small, plain piece of jade from under the counter. He carved a swift character on it with a flick of his finger, the numeral 1. First-time customer loyalty card, Lu Chun said, pushing it across the counter with the bundle. It entitles you to nothing now, but may have future value. The price remains the same. It was the final straw of absurdity. A loyalty card in a cultivation wilderness. Lin Feng's knees buckled. The poison was winning. He looked at the kit, then at the merchant's impassive face. There was no pity there, no greed, even, just a cold expectation of transaction. With a shaking hand, Lin Feng untied the small bag from his belt. It contained all his worldly wealth, 12 low-grade spirit stones, a few silver tails, and 2 broken beast cores. He dumped it on the counter. It's all I have. Lu Chun counted swiftly. It's approximately 40% of the asking price. Then take just the antidote, Lin Feng begged. The kit is sold as a unit. Bundle pricing. Lu Chun's tone was that of a man explaining basic arithmetic to a child. He looked at Lin Feng's ashen face, then at the paltry sum. A long, silent moment passed. Lin Feng felt the darkness closing in. Fine, Lu Chun said abruptly. He swept the coins and stones into a drawer. Deficiency recorded against your loyalty account. Interest accrues at 5% per lunar cycle. Now take your kit and leave. You're dripping blood on my floor, and I charge extra for biohazard cleanup. Stunned, weak with relief and residual fury, Lin Feng grabbed the bundle. He didn't thank the man. How could you thank a force of nature, a bizarre, immoral phenomenon like a sudden cliff or a rainstorm? He stumbled back out into the valley, found a secluded spot, and used the kit. The antidote worked with swift, cool efficiency. The spirit stones replenished his energy. The talisman, when activated, slid along his sword blade with a sound like a sigh, and the metal gleamed, the notch smoothing out. He had survived. He was equipped. He looked back at the shop, its lantern now glowing softly in the gathering twilight. The merchant was visible through the window, head bent over his ledger, already writing. He didn't look up to see if Lin Feng lived or died. He was just recording the sale. Lin Feng felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the poison. Who was this man? What was this place? It felt less like a fortuitous encounter and more like being a customer in a play where only the merchant knew the script. He tucked the loyalty card jade into his pouch. It felt cold and strange. Then he turned and fled the valley, the mystery haunting him more than any spirit beast ever could. Chapter 3. The Discount That Never Comes. 3 months later, Lin Feng's feet, seemingly of their own accord, carried him towards the misty swamp. The Swamp of Sighing Ghosts, the locals called it. It was a notorious place where miasma rose in pearlescent clouds and giant leeches the size of dogs lurked in the black water. According to a rumor he'd heard in a tavern, a rumor that felt oddly specific, a rare ghost-eye mushroom grew deep within, a key ingredient for a pill that could solidify his recently broken-through foundation establishment realm. He also knew, with a certainty he couldn't explain, that there would be a shop. And there it was, perched on the only solid, dry hillock for miles, overlooking the treacherous bog. The same polished wood, the same sign, faded encounter pawn and provisions, Swamp Ranch. A smaller sign beneath it advertised, miasma filter talismans. Buy one, get your second lungful free. Lin Feng's jaw tightened. It was him, the merchant. His feelings were a tangled knot. This man had saved his life, then charged him into destitution for it. He provided impossible solutions with insulting indifference. Lin Feng had turned the encounter over in his mind 100 times. Was he a hidden expert testing his heart? A demon playing a long game? Or just, as he appeared, a profoundly strange miser? Today, Lin Feng decided he would find out. He would poke the bear. Or, more accurately, he would get mauled and see if the bear cared. He didn't go inside immediately. Instead, he ventured into the swamp, seeking the mushroom. He found it, guarded not by a spirit beast, but by a colony of vicious, chi-absorbing blood mosquitoes. The fight was chaotic and demeaning. He got the mushroom, but in the process, he let a giant bog leech latch onto his arm, draining his blood and injecting a potent anticoagulant. He stumbled out of the muck, pale, his arms swollen and leaking blood that wouldn't clot, and made a deliberate, theatrical collapse right onto the wooden porch of fated encounter. He groaned loudly. He made sure the leech was prominently visible, a fat, black slug-like thing pulsing on his forearm. He waited. The door opened. Lu Chun stood there, holding a ledger. He looked down at Lin Feng, his expression one of mild annoyance, like a man finding a pigeon on his windowsill. On-site medical assistance, Lu Chun stated, his voice devoid of any concern, incurs a 50% convenience fee on top of standard treatment costs. Additionally, you are depositing biological contaminants on my porch. That's a 10-spirit stone cleaning surcharge. The leech is proprietary swamp fauna. Removal and disposal is an extra 5. Lin Feng blinked up at him, blood loss making him bold and foolish. Can't you just help? As one human to another. He injected a pitiful wheeze into his voice. Lu Chun crouched down, peering at the leech with analytical interest. Interesting specimen. Size indicates it fed well. The anticoagulant is quite potent. He then looked Lin Feng dead in the eyes. My humanity is factored into the base price of the antidote. It does not provide a discount. Something in Lin Feng snapped. The pain, the absurdity, the months of wondering. Do you care for nothing but money? He roared, pushing himself up on his good arm. Lu Chun didn't flinch. He stood up, brushed a non-existent speck of dust from his robe, and replied with perfectly calibrated boredom. I also care about counterfeit currency. It ruins profit margins. Now, about your payment. Will it be in standard spirit stones? Or do you have another piece of sentimental junk to try and pawn? The words were like ice water. Lin Feng's heroic rage, the kind that usually powered breakthroughs in face-slapping scenes, sputtered and died. He was just a transaction, a line in a ledger. He felt more invisible, more insignificant than he ever had facing a mighty foe. Defeated, he muttered, "I have stones." He'd sold the ghost eye mushroom to an alchemist on the swamp's edge just before his accident. "Excellent," Lu Chun said. He produced a pair of silver tweezers from his sleeve, deftly plucked the leech off Lin Feng's arm, dropped it into a jar, and then applied a pungent salve and a tight bandage. The bleeding stopped instantly. He handed Lin Feng a small pill. "For the blood loss. Taken orally. That's included in the package." Lin Feng numbly handed over a small pouch of spirit stones. Lu Chun counted them, nodded, and produced a slip of paper, an itemized receipt. Leech removal, 5 STS. Anticoagulant antidote, 20 STS. Blood replenishing pill, 15 STS. Porch bio cleanup surcharge, 10 STS. On-site service fee, 50%, 25 STS. Total, 75 low-grade spirit stones. "Your loyalty card," Lu Chun said, holding out his hand. Lin Feng fumbled in his pouch and produced the little jade piece. Lu Chun took it, made a note in his ledger, and handed it back. The numeral 1 now had a tiny, intricate 75 etched beneath it. "Your debt, with accrued interest, is now 89 stones," Lu Chun informed him. "Please settle it at your earliest convenience to avoid further interest penalties." Lin Feng stood, his body healing but his spirit bruised in a new way. He looked at the merchant, who was already turning to go back inside, his ledger more interesting than his customer's survival. "Who are you?" Lin Feng asked, the question ripped from him. Lu Chun paused at the door. He didn't look back. "I'm the guy who sells the kit. That's all you need to know." The door closed with a soft, final click. Lin Feng stood on the porch, the swamp mist curling around him. He wasn't angry anymore. He was obsessed. This wasn't a test of courage or righteousness. It was a riddle. A man who held the keys to survival but valued only cold, hard currency. A man who stood at the crossroads of destiny and ran a toll booth. He tucked his loyalty card, now a symbol of his debt and his confusion, back in his pouch. He had a new mission, not given by an elder or a secret manual, but born from sheer, infuriated curiosity. He would find out what made Lu Chun tick, even if it took him getting injured outside every one of his damned shops. Chapter 4. The Rival, a Customer in Disguise. News, in the cultivation world, traveled on the wings of gossip and envy. Tales of a mysterious, ubiquitous merchant who sold exactly what you needed began to circulate, first in tavern whispers, then in the grumbles of frustrated young masters who found their secret herb patches preemptively harvested. One such young master was Zhao Hao, scion of the Verdant Blade sect, a local power. Arrogant, wealthy, and perpetually bored, Zhao Hao had set his sights on the nascent, whispering caverns realm as his personal playground to gain face and a shiny new treasure. His informants told him the realm's key, a moon-touched pebble, was hidden in a specific stream. He arrived to find the pebble gone, and a discreet sign pointing up the path. Fated encounter provisions, 500 paces. Realm entry kits available. Infuriated, Zhao Hao stormed up the hill with his 2 lackeys. He found the now-familiar shop, this time built into the mouth of a secondary cave near the main realm entrance. Cultivators milled about, buying maps and talismans. "Shopkeeper," Zhao Hao bellowed, shoving a nervous-looking chi condensation cultivator aside. Lu Chun looked up from behind his counter, where he was demonstrating a mist-dispersing sensor to a young female cultivator. His expression didn't change. "Welcome to Fated Encounter. Please take a number. Currently serving customer number 7. He gestured to a small, carved token in the woman's hand. Zhao Hao's face purpled. He slammed his palm on the counter, making the sensor rattle. "I am Zhao Hao of the Verdant Blade sect. You stole the moon-touched pebble from my stream. Hand it over, along with all your profits from this scam, and I might let you leave with only a broken leg." A hush fell over the shop. This was a classic Xinxia scene. the arrogant young master demanding face. Lu Chun sighed, a small, weary sound. He looked at Zhao Hao not with fear, but with the mild irritation of a clerk dealing with a difficult return. I purchased all acquisition rights to unclaimed materials in this valley from the local mountain spirit. The contract is binding in spiritual law. The pebble was legally obtained. This was a blatant lie, but Lu Chun said it with such bland certainty that even Zhao Hao hesitated. Lies! You're nothing but a parasite on the body of cultivation. Zhao Hao spat. Parasitism is a valid, if misunderstood, ecological niche, Lu Chun replied. He then leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a confidential tone. However, I sense your real concern isn't the pebble, but prestige. You wish to dominate the coming trials in the Whispering Caverns. Specifically, you wish to defeat a certain young cultivator named Lin Feng, who will be entering the realm today. Zhao Hao froze. How did this mere merchant know his thoughts? Know Lin Feng's name? What of it? I'm a merchant, Lu Chun said, spreading his hands. I sell solutions. The pebble is not for sale, but I have something better. He reached under the counter and produced a talisman. It was intricate, woven from silver thread and a shard of what looked like frozen lightning. It hummed with potent, aggressive energy. Heavenly Judgment Talisman. Single use. Unleashes a bolt of tribulation-grade lightning, enough to shatter the earthroot crystal Lin Feng seeks and leave him vulnerable for a decisive confrontation. Zhao Hao's eyes gleamed with avarice. This was power. This was face. I'll take it. It is, as one might expect, quite expensive, Lu Chun said, naming a figure that made even the wealthy young Master blanch. Ridiculous. That's half my quarterly allowance. Then I suggest you budget better next quarter, Lu Chun said, starting to put the talisman away. Wait. Zhao Hao gritted his teeth. The thought of humiliating that upstart Lin Feng, who had bested him in a spar the previous month, was too sweet. He haggled. He threatened. He postured. Lu Chun remained unmoved, occasionally pointing to a sign on the wall. Prices firm. Haggling increases cost by 10%. Finally, seething, Zhao Hao paid. He snatched the talisman. This had better work, merchant, or my sect will burn this shack of yours to the ground. Lu Chun handed him a detailed receipt. 1 Heavenly Judgment Talisman. No warranties on user incompetence. All sales final. He then added, almost as an afterthought, should you require post-conflict recovery items, healing pills, escape talismans, reparative ointments for, say, lightning backlash, I have a revenge recovery package prepared. It's available at a 15% markup from standard prices, given the time-sensitive nature of revenge. Zhao Hao stormed out, too enraged to even process the offer. Inside the Whispering Caverns, Lin Feng moved with uncharacteristic ease. The map he'd bought from Lu Chun, at the usual markup, was impeccably accurate, leading him past dormant stone sentinels and illusory pits straight to the central grotto where the earthroot crystal pulsed with yellow light. He was just reaching for it when Zhao Hao leapt from a shadow, the silver talisman held high. Lin Feng, your luck ends here. He activated the talisman. The cavern erupted in actinic light and a deafening crack. A spear of pure lightning descended, not on Lin Feng, but directly onto the earthroot crystal. The hero, forewarned by the map's notes about potential energy instability in the central chamber, had already ducked behind a specific, non-conductive stalagmite. The lightning struck the crystal, and instead of shattering it, the pure earth energy of the crystal absorbed the lightning, resonated violently, and then released it in a diffuse, concussive shockwave. The blast threw Zhao Hao against the wall, his expensive robes scorched, his hair standing on end, the spent talisman a blackened scrap in his hand. Lin Feng, shielded, was merely knocked back a step. Lin Feng looked from the dazed, groaning Zhao Hao to the earthroot crystal, which now glowed with a faint, crackling yellow-white light, its energy even more potent than before. He understood. The talisman had been real, powerful, but it was the wrong tool for the job, perfectly countered by the environment. The merchant hadn't lied. He just sold a solution that didn't fit the problem. He took the enhanced crystal. As he passed Zhao Hao, he paused. You bought that from him, didn't you? The merchant. Zhao Hao coughed out a mouthful of dust. He tricked me. Did he? Lin Feng mused, looking at the crystal in his hand. He sold you exactly what he said he would. You just didn't ask the right questions. A strange feeling washed over him. Not schadenfreude, but a dawning comprehension. Lu Chen's amorality was a weapon that cut all directions. He wouldn't cheat you, but he wouldn't save you from your own stupidity either. Later, outside the cavern, Lin Feng watched from a concealed ridge as a furious, soot-stained Zhao Hao limped up to the fated encounter shop, demanding redress. Lu Chun listened calmly, then produced the signed receipt. He pointed to the clause. No warranties on user incompetence. He then, with infuriating calm, presented the revenge recovery package on a velvet tray. Given your clear need, the price is now 20% above standard. Will you be paying in spirit stones, or shall I add it to your new line of credit? Zhao Hao, defeated and in pain, paid. Again, Lin Feng turned and walked away, a wry, unwilling smile touching his lips. The world wasn't black and white, righteous and evil. The merchant had painted it in shades of ledger paper and ink. And somehow, by refusing to play by anyone's rules but his own, he was the only one who always came out ahead. It was horrifying. It was fascinating. Lin Feng's resolve hardened. He would unravel this mystery. He had to. Chapter 5. The Hidden Realm Grand Opening. The grand opening of the Whispering Caverns branch was, in Lu Chen's professional opinion, a resounding success. The pop-up stall inside the entrance tunnel had done brisk business in maps, talismans, and commemorative realm entry tokens, worthless brass discs. The main shop outside had moved significant inventory in healing salves and post-adventure spiritual detox tea. Now, as the realm's energy signature began to wane, signaling its imminent closure for another decade, Lu Chen was doing inventory when the door slammed open. Lin Feng stood there, the newly enhanced earthroot crystal a warm weight in his pouch. But his face wasn't triumphant. It was stormy, etched with a betrayal more personal than any Zhao Hao could muster. You, Lin Feng said, his voice low and tense. Customer Lin Feng, Lu Chen greeted, not looking up from his ledger. I trust the earthroot crystal is to your satisfaction. Its energy signature seems to have diversified. You robbed me, Lin Feng accused, striding to the counter. Lu Chen finally glanced up, one eyebrow slightly raised. I have your receipt here. One Whispering Caverns expedited pathfinding map. You paid. I delivered. Theft is a strong accusation with legal and karmic implications I'd rather avoid. Not on my money. Lin Feng's fist clenched on the counter. On my trial. The map. The warnings. You bypassed the chamber of echoing regrets. The maze of mist. I walked a straight line to the treasure. I didn't earn it. I purchased it. Ah. Lu Chen closed his ledger. This was a new customer complaint. Emotional dissatisfaction with product efficacy. He prepared for this. Customer Lin. The product sold was safe passage to the earthroot crystal. It provided exactly that. The trials you mention are optional content. Hazardous. With high risk of mental breakdown, physical maiming, or death. My product streamlined the process, minimizing risk and maximizing efficiency. This is a premium service. Efficiency, Lin Feng laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. This is cultivation. The struggle is the path. The pain is the lesson. You can't just sell a shortcut to power. Why not? Lu Chen asked, genuinely curious. Sect elders sell pills. Auction houses sell artifacts. I sell information and convenience. It's all transactional. You exchange currency for a resource that advances your cultivation. The method is irrelevant. The method is everything. Lin Feng's chi flared, causing the talismans on the nearby shelf to flutter. A foundation built on struggle is unshakable. A foundation built on a shopping list is hollow. Lu Chen considered this. From a cultivation perspective, the boy was probably right. From a business perspective, he was a naive idealist. Then don't buy it, Lu Chen said simply. The door is there. No one forced you to purchase the map. You could have gone in blind, faced the trials, possibly died. You made a choice. A rational one, given the data. You chose survival and guaranteed gain over honorable risk. The words landed like physical blows. Lin Feng staggered back. That was the cruelest truth of all. He had chosen. The merchant hadn't tricked him. He'd presented an option, and Lin Feng, for all his talk of the righteous path, had taken the easy way out. The shame was his own. You turn everything to gold, Lin Feng whispered, his anger deflating into a profound weariness. Even a cultivator's journey. You make us consumers of our own destiny. I provide a service, Lu Chun corrected, his tone softening a fraction, not with empathy, but with the patience of a man explaining a complex contract. What you do with it, the meaning you assign to it, is your own spiritual work, not included in the purchase price. He pulled out a small, plain pamphlet from under the counter and slid it across. However, if you're feeling spiritually unfulfilled, I do offer a premium subscription. The Path of Adversity, curated challenge packages. I select a dangerous location suitable for your level, provide only the barest survival necessities, and charge a monthly fee. High risk, high potential reward, minimal interference. It's popular with masochists and traditionalists. Lin Feng stared at the pamphlet, then at Lu Chen's utterly serious face. He didn't know whether to scream, laugh, or cry. The merchant had an answer for everything, and every answer was a price tag. He left the shop without another word, the earthroot crystal feeling strangely heavy, its power tainted by the ease of its acquisition. Lu Chen watched him go. He felt a faint, unfamiliar prickling, something like regret. He shook it off. Sentiment was a liability. Lin Feng's crisis of conscience was not his problem. His business was thriving. The Hidden Realm grand opening had been a logistical masterpiece. He returned to his ledger. The numbers, clean and unambiguous, comforted him. They were a wall against the messy, emotional world of heroes and their journeys. A wall he intended to keep very, very high. Chapter 6. The Accidental Life Debt. Lu Chen's business model had an unforeseen side effect. It concentrated cultivators. Where one fated encounter shop stood, dozens of ambitious seekers would gather, hoping to buy their way to fortune. This created a rich, if volatile, ecosystem. It also attracted predators. The shadow-toothed panther was a beast of the late Foundation establishment stage, a solitary hunter of spiritual energy. The sudden bloom of dozens of cultivators, their auras bright with hope and recently purchased treasures, at the foot of the Fang Peaks branch was like a dinner gong. Lu Chan was reviewing a shipment of frost-resistant cloaks when he heard the first scream. Then a crash, the shattering of wood, and a roar that vibrated in his bones. He rushed to the window. Chaos. Cultivators were scattering, talismans flashing uselessly against the panther's inky, chi-absorbing fur. The beast was a slice of moving night, all muscle and rending shadows, and it was carving a path of carnage straight towards his shop. This wasn't in the book, Lu Chan thought, cold dread icing his veins. Lin Feng wasn't supposed to face a shadow-toother until the Misty Gorge arc, Chapter 112. His mind, usually a fortress of calculations, scrambled. He had no combat prowess. His wealth was in assets, not power. The protective arrays around his shop were designed for thieves and disgruntled customers, not a rampaging, quasi-demonic beast. The panther slammed into the shop's front wall. Talismans flared and died. Wood splintered. The beast's head, massive and crowned with spines of solidified shadow, thrust through the opening, its maw a pit of darkness lined with teeth that seemed to drink the light. Lu Chun stumbled back, tripping over a crate of spirit stones. This was it. Not a heroic death by the sword of destiny, but a messy, ignoble end as monster chow. The irony was almost poetic. A blur of motion. A shout, "Get back!" Lin Feng. He must have been nearby, drawn by the commotion or perhaps just lingering, as he so often did. He didn't hesitate. His sword, now gleaming with a sharper edge thanks to a previous purchase, met the Panther's charge not with a graceful technique, but with a desperate, full-body block. The impact was terrible. Lin Feng was thrown across the shop, crashing into the counter. The Panther recoiled, snarling, a shallow cut on its snout. It focused its baleful eyes on this new threat. Lin Feng pushed himself up, blood already staining his side from a deep gash. The throat. Its weak spot is under the jaw, where the shadows thin, he yelled, not to Lu Chun, but to the few remaining cultivators outside. He was buying time. For them. For him. The fight was brutal and short. Lin Feng was outmatched. He used every trick, every ounce of qi, but the Panther was a force of nature. A shadowy paw swiped, and Lin Feng's block was shattered. He was flung again, this time landing at Lu Chen's feet, a broken, bleeding heap. The Panther advanced, its victory assured. Lu Chen looked down. Lin Feng's eyes were glazed with pain, but they met his. The hero gave a weak, bloody smile. Now, he rasped, each word a struggle. Do I get discount? The world seemed to narrow to that smile, that stupid, heroic, self-sacrificing joke. The carefully constructed wall in Lu Chen's mind, the one made of ledgers and policies and cold logic, developed a catastrophic crack. Panic, raw and primal, surged, not just fear for himself, but a terrifying, unfamiliar fear for someone else. This idiot had just traded his life for Lu Chen's. A life debt, the worst possible kind of plot entanglement, the most binding of karmic threads. No. External panic became internal frenzy. He had to fix this. He had to quantify it, contain it, transactionalize it. The Panther lunged. Lu Chen didn't think. He grabbed the nearest valuable thing, a crystalline orb used for detecting water, and threw it with all his might at the beast's head. It missed, shattering against the wall. But the distraction, tiny as it was, made the Panther hesitate for a split second. That was enough for the remaining cultivators, rallied by Lin Feng's sacrifice and Lu Chen's bizarre projectile, to launch a coordinated assault. A volley of fire talismans, ice needles, and one very expensive mountain-severing sword beam, talisman, purchased on credit moments before, finally found the weak spot under the beast's jaw. The shadow-toothed Panther died with a sound like a collapsing star. Silence fell, broken by moans of the wounded. Lu Chen didn't look at the corpse. He dropped to his knees beside Lin Feng. His hands, usually so steady for counting coins, trembled as he ripped open Lin Feng's torn robe. The wound was bad. Ribs were visible. Shadow-tainted blood oozed. Working with frantic, clinical efficiency, Lu Chen fetched his best supplies. Moondew elixir for cleansing shadow poison. Golden marrow pill for bone repair. Spider silk bandages infused with healing arrays. He used them all without a second thought for their cost, applying pressure, pouring elixirs, his face a mask of intense, unreadable concentration. Lin Feng watched him through a haze of pain. He saw no gratitude, no fear, no relief on the merchant's face. Just furious focus, like a craftsman repairing a broken, very expensive vase. Finally, the bleeding stopped. The shadow taint receded. Lin Feng's breathing evened out. He would live. Lu Chen sat back on his heels. He was covered in Lin Feng's blood. His shop was a wreck. The most valuable, plot-critical asset he knew, the hero, had nearly been destroyed on his doorstep. And he owed a life debt. He couldn't allow it. He wouldn't. He stood, walked to his miraculously intact desk, and picked up a brush. He wrote swiftly, his strokes sharp and precise. He then returned to Lin Feng, who was trying to sit up. Don't, Lu Chen said, his voice flat again, the brief crack in his facade sealed over with bureaucratic steel. He held out the paper. It was an invoice. Itemized service. Moondew elixir, superior grade, 80 STS. Golden marrow pill, 120 STS. Spider silk healing array bandages, X3, 45 STS. Emergency on-site surgical intervention, 100 STS. Shopfront damage, beast-related, waived. Total, 345 mid-grade spirit stones. At the bottom, in bold characters, it read, life-saving service fee, Waived this time. Outstanding balance. 0. Do not repeat. Lin Feng took the paper. He read it. The blood drained from his face, leaving him paler than from his injuries. The hope, the fragile, foolish hope that this act of sacrifice might have finally pierced the merchant's shell, evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hollow void. Lu Chun had taken the ultimate act of selfless courage and turned it into a line item. He had taken a life debt and canceled it with a waiver. Lin Feng looked from the invoice to Lu Chen's empty eyes. For the first time, he didn't see a mysterious expert or a greedy miser. He saw something far more terrifying. A man so pathologically afraid of human connection that he would rather burn the world with receipts than feel a moment of gratitude. Wordlessly, Lin Feng used his sword as a crutch and limped out of the shattered shop into the dawn. Lu Chun watched him go, the bloody invoice clutched in the hero's hand. The crack in his wall was patched, but the memory of its failure and the terrifying feeling that had leaked through lingered. He had survived again, but for the first time, the taste of survival was ash and H. His mouth. Chapter 7. The offer he can't refuse but tries to. The scent of jasmine and decay announced her arrival. Lu Chun was overseeing the repairs to the Fang Peaks branch. The splintered wood being replaced, the bloodstains scrubbed from the floor. The cultivator community had been abuzz for days about the heroic, near-fatal stand of Lin Feng against the shadow-toothed panther. The grateful merchant's role was a footnote, a curious detail of him presenting an invoice afterward. The story solidified Lin Feng's rising legend and painted Lu Chun as an even more heartless eccentric. She walked in as if she owned the space. Lady Hua, of the Velvet Whisper sect. Her beauty was a weapon, luminous dark eyes, lips like a wound, robes that seemed woven from twilight and desire. Her aura was a subtle pressure, a promise of pleasure and oblivion. She was a major antagonist in the mid-game, a demonic siren who would eventually become one of Lin Feng's greatest temptations and foes. And in the original plot, she was the one who had secretly backed the greedy merchant, providing the fake map to entrap the hero. Her appearance here, now, was a deviation that froze Lu Chen's blood. "Shopkeeper Lu," she purred, her voice like honey over shards of glass. "What a fascinating little enterprise you run. So efficient." "Welcome to Fated Encounter," Lu Chun said, forcing his voice into its standard monotone. He felt like a rabbit staring down a fox. "Can I interest you in our reconstruction sale? Damaged goods are 50% off." She laughed, a sound that made the workmen pause and stare blankly for a moment before shaking their heads and returning to their work, confused. "I'm not here for damaged goods. I am here for information. You have a remarkable gift for prescience, Shopkeeper Lu. You're always in the right place with the right product." "I follow market trends," he said blandly. "You follow the threads of fate," she corrected, gliding closer. The scent of jasmine grew stronger, cloying. "You knew of the shadow-toothed panther? You knew Lin Feng would be there to stop it? Or did you perhaps arrange the encounter to test his resolve? To bind him to you with a debt he thinks you waived?" Her words were arrows, each finding a fear he harbored. "I sell survival kits," Lu Chen insisted. "Random beast attacks are a known occupational hazard. My risk assessment premiums are quite thorough. Enough games." Her playful tone vanished, replaced by glacial command. "I offer you a partnership. The resources of the Velvet Whisper sect. Protection from accidents. All the wealth you could desire. In return, you guide us. You tell us where the heavenly fate stones will fall, where the purple gold ginseng will next bloom, where the Sword Saint's tomb lies unsealed." It was the classic villain offer. Power, safety, riches. Everything his merchant's heart should supposedly crave. And it was a one-way ticket back to his original death flag. Allying with her was stepping onto the board as a named piece, and in this game, all pieces except the hero were ultimately sacrificed. His mind raced. Direct refusal meant death now. Acceptance meant death later, probably by Lin Feng's sword after a dramatic reveal of his treachery. "I operate on a cash-only basis," he blurted out, a desperate, absurd defense. "No partnerships, no equity shares. Retainer fees for consulting are exorbitant and require a 99-year non-compete, non-aggression clause. Are you prepared to discuss liquid assets? Lady Hua stared at him. For a long moment, the only sound was the hammering from outside. Her beautiful face showed first disbelief, then cold fury. You dare jest with me? I could unmake your soul with a thought. I could turn your precious shops into charnel houses. The pressure in the room spiked. Lu Chen's knees wanted to buckle. This was it. The end of his mind my business plan, cornered by a power he couldn't outrun or out-negotiate. Then a spark, a memory from the novel, around chapter 800. A minor detail. I have a counter-offer, he said, his voice dry but steady. A single transaction, no partnership. You get one piece of information, critical, actionable, and pertaining directly to the continued existence of your Velvet Whisper sect. Her eyes narrowed. Speak. Not until terms are set, Lu Chen said, a sliver of his old transactional confidence returning. The information, the location and nature of the heavenly tribulation of the sighing heart that will strike the foundation of your sect's ancestral mountain in 73 days. It is not a lightning tribulation. It is a tribulation of forgotten oaths, which will unravel the demonic binding arrays that keep your mountain's primordial spirit suppressed. If unprepared, the spirit's awakening will shatter your sect's foundation and drain the life from every cultivator whose core is tied to your blood jade palace. Lady Hua went perfectly still. The color drained from her face. This was a secret fear, a prophecy known only to her and the sect's oldest matriarch. For a mere merchant to know of it. What is your price? She whispered, all pretense of seduction gone. 1. Lu Chen held up a finger. A soul-bound oath that you, Lady Hua, will never seek to employ, coerce, harm, or indirectly cause harm to come to me, Lu Chen, or my business interests, in perpetuity. 2. A second finger. A one-time payment of 10,000 high-grade spirit stones, delivered within 3 days. 3. A third finger. You leave. Now, and you never come back to any of my establishments. Her gaze was like a physical weight. He could see the calculations, the rage, the desperate need warring in her eyes. The information was worth more than his paltry demands, but the humiliation of being dictated to by a mere merchant. Make the oath, Lu Chen pressed, pulling a pre-written contract of spiritual terms from his desk. Sign in blood and chi. Then I give you the location of the fracture point and the method to reinforce it with spirit anchor stones from the northern glacier. The stones are currently unguarded. You have time. With a snarl that showed a glimpse of fanged teeth, Lady Hua took the contract. She read it, sliced her palm, and infused it with her demonic chi, speaking the binding words. The paper flared with black and silver light, then vanished, the oath sealed in the heavenly Tao. She then tossed a heavy spatial ring onto the counter. It clinked with the sound of immense wealth. The information, she demanded. Lu Chen handed her a single slip of paper with coordinates and 3 lines of instruction. She read it, her face unreadable, then looked at him with something entirely new. Not lust, not anger, but a deep, wary respect for a dangerous and unpredictable creature. The merchant has served his purpose, she said softly, echoing words he knew from the novel, but now with a different meaning. Then she was gone, dissolving into a swirl of jasmine-scented shadows. Lu Chen sagged against the counter, his heart pounding. He'd done it. He'd bought his life from a demon with information. It was the ultimate transaction. Outside the window, unseen by Lu Chen, Lin Feng stood frozen, having arrived to, he didn't know why. To confront him? To thank him? He'd seen Lady Hua enter. He'd seen the intense conversation, the exchange, the oath, the ring of spirit stones. His blood ran cold. The merchant, the man who had saved his life only to invoice him, was in league with the demonic sect. The mysterious knowledge, the uncanny timing. It all made a terrible, horrible sense. Lu Chen wasn't a neutral force. He was a spy, a broker for the enemies of righteousness. The last flicker of hope in Lin Feng's heart died. replaced by a hardening core of bitter resolve. He had his answer. Lu Chun was for sale to the highest bidder, and Lin Feng had nothing left to bid with but his sword. He turned and walked away, his path clear for the first time since he'd met the merchant. When they next met, it would not be as customer and shopkeeper. It would be as enemies. Chapter 8. The script is broken. The storm arrives. 2 years to the day from his transmigration, Lu Chun stood behind the counter of his flagship store in Green Rain Town. It was the original location, now vastly expanded and fortified, a fortress of commerce. This was the place, according to the unchangeable script, where the greedy merchant was to scam Lin Feng with a fake map and set his doom in motion. Lu Chun had the map ready, but it wasn't fake. It was the most meticulously crafted, accurate, and annotated treasure map on the continent. It detailed the Jade Dragon's sepulchre, Lin Feng's next major fortuitous encounter, including the locations of all traps, the solution to the Guardian Golem's puzzle, and the safest method to extract the Jade Dragon's soul shard without triggering the collapse curse. He'd even included a recommended equipment list, all of which was, of course, in stock. He called it the Destiny Navigation Package. Price: 400 high-grade spirit stones. A 400% markup on the cost of its components. A fair price, he thought, for a guaranteed, low-risk path to immense power. The door opened, not with a hesitant push, but with a decisive swing. Lin Feng stood in the doorway. He was changed. The last of his boyish softness was gone, burned away by 2 years of tribulation and growth. His eyes, once bright with idealism and confusion, were now hard as chips of flint. His cultivation had soared. He radiated the sharp, boundless energy of the late Foundation establishment stage, bordering on core formation. He was every inch the heavens' chosen hero, and he was looking at Lu Chun not with bafflement or frustration, but with cold, clear hatred. Lu Chun, Lin Feng said. His voice was flat, final. Customer Lin Feng, Lu Chun replied, maintaining protocol. He felt a strange tightness in his chest. This was the moment, the culmination of his plan. Welcome. I have a pre-prepared package for your current life chapter. He placed the ornate scroll tube on the counter. Lin Feng didn't even glance at it. Is that the map? The one you sell before betrayal. It is a map, Lu Chun confirmed. To the Jade Dragon's sepulchre. Specifications include. I don't want your cursed packages. Lin Feng's roar shook the shelves. He slammed his fist on the counter, the sandalwood cracking under the impact. All pretense of calm shattered. I don't want your talismans, your pills, your streamlined paths. I want to know why. Lu Chun blinked. This was off-script. The why is irrelevant to the transaction. The product's utility. Why do you help me if you despise me? Lin Feng leaned forward, his chi a palpable storm front, pressing against Lu Chun's non-cultivator senses. Why save my life, only to send me an invoice? Why give me exactly what I need, only to sell the same to my enemies? What game are you playing, merchant? What are you truly after? Is it just the stones? Or is it my soul? My destiny? What do you want from me? Each question was a hammer blow. Lu Chun's carefully constructed world, built on spreadsheets and policies, trembled. The wall was cracking again, and this time, there was no ledger entry to patch it. He had prepared for anger, for negotiation, for a clean sale. He had not prepared for this raw, human demand for meaning. His mouth opened, but no sales pitch came out. No deflection. No price. He just stood there exposed. The ultimate merchant, finally without a product to sell for the question being asked. He saw it in Lin Feng's eyes. The hope for an answer. Any answer. That wasn't a decimal point. The desperate need to believe their encounters had meant something beyond profit and loss. And in that frozen, silent second where Lu Chun failed to speak, the sky outside turned to ink. A darkness deeper than night fell over Green Rain Town. Not a cloud, but an absence of light, a swallowing void. The air grew heavy and sweet with the scent of crushing jasmine. From the swirling gloom above, Lady Hua descended, not alone. For demonic elders of the Velvet Whisper sect flanked her, their auras coiling like diseased serpents. They landed in the street outside, but their attention was fixed on the shop. on Lin Feng. Lady Hua's eyes, however, went first to Lu Chun. A smile touched her lips, not of partnership, but of vicious satisfaction. "The merchant has served his purpose," she declared, her voice amplified, echoing through the suddenly silent town. "He led you right to me, little hero, so predictable in your need to confront him. A useful beacon." Lin Feng's head whipped from Lu Chun to Lady Hua and back. The betrayal he suspected was now confirmed, made public, theatrical. His heart turned to stone in his chest. Lu Chun understood instantly. She had kept her oath. She hadn't harmed him. She hadn't come for him. She had simply watched, knowing the plot, knowing Lin Feng's psychology, and had used Lu Chun's location as bait. He had, in his desperation to stay out of the narrative, become its most reliable landmark. The script was broken, but the players were still trapped in the tragedy. Lin Feng drew his sword, its blade ringing with a clear, righteous light that pushed against the oppressive darkness. He didn't look at Lu Chun again. "This is between us, Demonis. Leave the merchant out of it." "But he is in it," Lady Hua crooned. "He is the thread that brought you here, the neutral ground where you felt safe to vent your little frustrations. Now come. The Blood Jade Palace has a cell with your name on it." The demonic elders moved. Lin Feng leapt through the shattered front window to meet them in the street, his sword clashing against a wave of shadowy tendrils and psychic screams. Lu Chun stood behind his broken counter, in his broken shop, the unsold Destiny navigation package before him. The storm of combat raged outside, blasts of energy shaking the foundations, the street tearing apart. He was safe. Lady Hua's oath guaranteed it. No demonic attack would touch him. He looked at Lin Feng, a lone figure of brilliant light holding off 5 terrifying demons, fighting for his life, for his destiny. He was going to lose. The ambush was perfect. The numbers flashed in Lu Chun's mind. Asterisk probability of Lin Feng's survival, less than 5%. Impact of Lin Feng's capture/death. Total narrative collapse. Unknown consequences. Personal survival probability post-hero's death. Uncalculable. Market instability. Catastrophic. Asterisk. But that wasn't it. That wasn't the crack that finally shattered the wall. It was the memory. Lin Feng, bleeding on his floor, smiling through the pain. "Do I get a discount?" A joke. A human moment. An attempt to connect, even then. And Lu Chun had handed him an invoice. He looked at the map tube, at the empty receipt book, at the cold, perfect logic of his survival. It all felt like ash. It was the highest profit margin he'd ever achieved, his own life, and it was worthless. With a sound that was almost a sob, Lu Chun reached under the counter. Not for a talisman or a pill. He pulled out the very first deluxe survival kit he'd ever assembled, the prototype. Then he grabbed a heavy bag from Strongbox, 10,000 high-grade spirit stones, Lady Hua's blood money. He threw the bag and the kit through the broken window. They landed at the feet of a startled, elderly pill shop owner who was peering out from across the street. "Use it!" Lu Chun screamed, his voice raw, breaking for the first time in 2 lifetimes. "Heal him when he falls. Hire every mercenary in the town. Do whatever it takes." He then turned, not towards the safety of his cellar, but towards his own storage vault. He didn't know how to fight, but he knew inventory, and he had enough forbidden, high-yield, unstable, clear-sky thunder orbs, purchased as a deterrent, to level a mountain. The script was dead. The business model was a failure. All that was left was a terrible and profitable human choice. As he ran towards the vault, the ledger of his life finally balanced in the most catastrophic way possible. The column marked profit was 0. The column marked purpose was a question mark, written in blood and lightning. The storm had arrived, and Lu Chun, the greedy merchant, was finally, irrevocably, in the thick of it.